Hello and welcome to another deep dive here on the Deep Dive. Today, if you're up for it, we're going to explore the really fascinating life and multifaceted career of a name you'll definitely know if you followed Spanish basketball history at all, Fernando Romay. And as always, we've got our expert guide here to break down all the details.
It's great to be here to look into the journey of such a unique and well-loved figure.
Exactly. And to prepare for this deep dive, we've drawn from a really rich source. The recent, very extensive interview Fernando Romay gave on the YouTube channel En la Barra de un Bar with Juan Creel. It's a space, if you know it, where Juan shows some really interesting analytical talent, always with, good judgment, sharp interpretation, that valuable common sense, and reflections that genuinely make you think.
Absolutely. That conversation with Romay is a goldmine of anecdotes and viewpoints. It'll let us, like you said, go way beyond just listing his sports achievements.
Right. Our mission today, then, is to really immerse ourselves in the depths of Romay's life, uncovering those surprising details and personal insights that often get left out of the usual sports narrative. So get ready, because I think the journey ahead is going to be pretty interesting.
I agree. We'll trace his path right from his almost accidental start in basketball, that unexpected turn that led him to sign with Real Madrid, his experiences during a pivotal time in Spanish history, the camaraderie and challenges of pro sports, and then a surprising shift into other fields later on.
Okay, let's kick off at the beginning. How does a kid who, by his own account, wasn't exactly an athletic prodigy end up becoming an iconic figure in basketball? Well, the key seems to be his height, combined with a suggestion from a classmate when he was about 12 or 13 in A Coruña. What do you make of that?
What's really fascinating here, when you think about it, is that Romay had zero prior sports experience. In fact, he jokes about failing gym class. And not just any part, but the dreaded vaulting horse exercise. Seems like apparatus work wasn't his strong suit. His initial interests were, well, miles away from athletics. What does that tell us, maybe, about how talent sometimes gets discovered in unexpected ways?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
And if you put yourself in his parents' shoes, especially his mother's, in what he described as a matriarchal Galician household, letting their young son leave home couldn't have been easy. Romay speaks with immense gratitude about that sacrifice, the foresight his parents had in allowing him to chase that opportunity. Can you imagine the conversation in that house?
Yeah, and if you connect that with the mentality back then and the strong family ties that were common, the mother's decision carries even more weight, doesn't it? She sensed the scale of the opportunity and put her son's potential ahead of the emotional pull to keep him close. Real vision, I'd say.
And that opportunity opened the door to Madrid, an experience he describes as bittersweet at first. Tough, leaving home comforts, but also incredibly enriching, discovering a new world through basketball. How do you think that initial uprooting influences character?
And let's not forget his working class background. His parents worked incredibly hard in the port of A Coruña. His father, he poetically described him as a guardian of the tides, maintaining and repairing ships. His mother, in even tougher conditions, unloaded fish at night. A huge contrast to the life basketball would eventually offer him. Don't you think that background profoundly shaped how he faced challenges?
No doubt. And speaking of those early days, there's a funny anecdote he shared. His childhood fear of the movie La Mano Negra, The Black Hand, which made him sleep with the lights on when he was alone. Did you expect that confession from a future basketball giant?
Those little details, right? They're what make the figure human, reminding us that behind the elite athlete, there's a person with fears and insecurities. And look, it was right around then that a schoolmate suggested he try basketball. A seemingly tiny moment, but a total turning point in his life.
The most surprising part, if you really think about it, is that, in his own words, he was a disaster at basketball. He didn't even have a team, but somehow Real Madrid noticed him and gave him a tryout. There was also interest from other teams like Juventud and Estudiantes. What do you think they saw in such an inexperienced player that sparked interest from major clubs?
I think it speaks volumes about the vision of Real Madrid's scouts back then. They saw potential beyond his initial skill level. Maybe his height was the obvious factor, but they must have sensed a learning capacity and an attitude they could work with. And the irony, right? He wasn't even a big basketball fan. He supported Deportivo La Coruña, the football team. Although he does recall attending one significant Copa del Rey final between Real Madrid and Juventud, which was notable as the farewell game for Emiliano Rodriguez and Buscato. Can you imagine his surprise finding himself suddenly in that world?
Right, and this is where his personal story starts weaving into the evolution of basketball in Spain and Madrid, isn't it? Romeo reflects on how basketball once believed it could surpass football, an ambition that ultimately didn't pan out. Why do you think that illusion arose, and why didn't it quite happen?
What's fascinating here, analyzing his critical view, is how he perceives the path basketball took, trying to emulate the NBA. He notes a loss of, let's say, essence, less connection with fans due to the constant player turnover and the lack of a stable core in teams. Do you share that feeling that Spanish basketball lost something by trying too hard to be like the American League?
Well, he does also acknowledge the resurgence in basketball's popularity in Madrid with the arrival of the Chacho, Rudy, and Lul generation, a period that reignited the fans' passion. What ingredients do you think that generation had to reconnect with the public so effectively?
Romay highlights the importance of idols and the national team in forging that connection with the public. He contrasts this with an earlier era where, despite good club players, they didn't really become major figures outside their own teams. The national team has definitely played a huge role in popularizing basketball in Spain, wouldn't you agree?
And speaking of aspirations, Romay had the chance to play college basketball in the U.S., but Real Madrid wouldn't allow it. What does that tell you about the basketball landscape back then?
It gives us a very clear picture of the control clubs had over players in those years, and the NBA felt like a different planet. Fernando Martin was the first Spaniard to make the jump, and his stint wasn't exactly extensive. However, Romay recognizes the immense significance of that move for Spanish basketball, blazing a trail that seemed impossible before.
What many might not know is the sheer intensity of the training Romay underwent when he joined Real Madrid, 5 sessions a day, including secret workouts with the national team's physical trainer. What does this level of commitment reveal about his personality?
It definitely shows his enormous commitment and his fierce desire to improve. Going from a complete novice to being on the radar for the junior national team in just 2 years is testament to his dedication and work ethic. Although he also tells a pretty humbling story about the European Junior Championship, facing the towering Alexander Volkov, also known as Tachenko. The height difference was literally massive. Can you imagine that feeling?
Despite that difference, his career was filled with titles. But interestingly, Romay seems to value the journey and the people he met more than the trophies themselves. What do you think that says about his perspective on sport?
What stands out there, I think, is the importance he places on the human relationships built throughout his career. However, he does recall one specific loss with bitterness: the Copa del Rey final against Barcelona, with Solazabal's famous last-second shot, a thorn in his side that, from what he says, still stings today.
Does it surprise you that one moment like that can leave such a mark? And along that path, he forged lasting friendships, like the one he still has with Jose Beiran, whom he's known since their days living in the same boarding house, a relationship that endures. What value do these personal connections hold in a high-level sports career?
Those personal connections, in my view, are the real legacy of his career. Beyond the baskets and titles, what remain are the shared experiences and the emotional bonds that transcend sport itself.
Looking back at his start in Madrid, he talks about his train journey from A Coruña, first with his father, then later alone, a moment marked by his mother's advice: seize the opportunity. How do you interpret that simple yet powerful advice in the context of his life?
That maternal advice, right? It really sums up the significance of the opportunity before him. And arriving in Madrid, he experienced the political transition after Franco's death firsthand, living in the vibrant university district. Can you imagine what it must have been like for a young guy arriving in a city undergoing such transformation?
There's a chilling anecdote connecting his life with Fernando Martin's. Romay almost bought a car that Martin eventually acquired and tragically had his fatal accident in. How do you think that fact affected him?
It's a tragic detail that links their lives in a totally unexpected way. Martin's death had a huge impact on the team and the entire basketball community, even transcending sporting rivalries. It was a massive blow for everyone.
Romay remembers the shock, the silence in the locker room when they got the news, and the surreal experience of having to play a European game shortly after the funeral. A game they approached with the winning mentality that characterized Fernando Martin. Win by 20. What did that team reaction tell you?
That reaction from the team, I believe, reflects a spirit of resilience and also an implicit tribute to their fallen teammate. A moment of profound grief, certainly, but also one of great unity and determination.
In contrast to that sadness, Romay also experienced unforgettable moments of glory, like the unexpected silver medal at the Los Angeles Olympics. What did that achievement mean for Spanish basketball?
That was, without a doubt, a landmark moment for Spanish basketball. A surprise success that showed the potential of a talented generation of players and really put Spanish basketball on the international map.
Shortly after that success came his departure from Real Madrid, a move that, as he admits, is never easy. He felt he still had more to give, but the club was moving in a different direction. How are those kinds of situations typically managed in professional sports?
It's quite common in pro sports, really. Cycles end, and sometimes club decisions don't align with the players' wishes or expectations. It's just part of the dynamic of that world.
But his career didn't end there. Romay kept promises he'd made to presidents of clubs like Larda Ferrol and Zaragoza, showing personal commitment beyond the big teams. What value does that kind of loyalty hold in sport?
That loyalty and sense of keeping his word is admirable. And then came that surprising transition to American football with the Madrid Panthers, where he experienced the difference between professional and amateur sports firsthand. A very enriching experience, I'm sure.
For Romay, sport has always been linked to those moments that take your breath away, the essence of truly living. Today, he still enjoys watching ACB basketball, women's basketball 3x3, and even some NBA, expressing admiration for young talents like Usman Garuba. What do you think he still finds in sport after all these years?
His passion for sport is clear. And after his playing days, he jumped into television presenting, starting with Emilio Aragon. Interestingly, he didn't initially ask Real Madrid for permission for this new venture. What does that anecdote suggest to you?
It's an anecdote that perhaps reflects an independent spirit and a less rigid view of sports back then, where even unconventional reports were possible. Do you think the sports media landscape has changed much since then?
The media landscape was definitely very different. Less formal, maybe more approachable, and that spontaneity perhaps suited Romay's open and communicative personality better.
Currently, Fernando Romay is involved in an important cause, fighting for fair retirement benefits for athletes whose professional status was only formally recognized in 1993. Many face difficulties accumulating the necessary years of contributions. What are your thoughts on this cause?
It's a noble and very necessary cause. Recognizing the unique nature of an athletic career and its peculiarities within the pension system is crucial to ensure a dignified future for many athletes.
To wrap up, how about some quick-fire questions that give us little glimpses into his tastes and thoughts? Michael Jordan, the god of playing basketball. His childhood friend who suggested basketball. Baki, Francisco Javier Núñez, if he hadn't been a basketball player. A tall guy in Coruña, a movie. Spaghetti westerns because of his connection with film extras who trained at the Bernabeu. A habit, adjusting his back. A pending matter. Many things, but especially advocating for older people, packing for a trip. Always forget something due to his height. The best current basketball player, Usman Garuba, the greatest of all time in basketball, includes Jordan, Mirza Delibasic, Sabonis, Dirk Nowitzki, and Steph Curry as game changers. The best current football player, Mbappe. Best advice from his mother, seize the opportunity. Best advice from his father, it's your great opportunity, fight for it. A place to disconnect. Coruña, a place to live. Initially Claudio Villalba, but he misses Coruña. Real Madrid is a school of life and values. Florentino Perez is probably one of the best directors there is. His relationship with him, non-existent, unfortunately. A hobby, reading music, watching TV, learning from people like Iñaki Cano. His wife has brought him serenity and keeps him grounded. And a final thought, sport is a school of values that should be taught to children in a sporting, not just competitive way. What do you make of these direct answers?
Very concise answers, as you say, giving us a really complete and varied picture of his personality and his many experiences.
So summing up this deep dive into Fernando Romay's life, we see the role of chance in starting his career, the perseverance he showed against initial setbacks, his adaptability in a changing sports landscape, the immense value of the human connections he made, and his ability to find new passions after a successful basketball career. What's your main takeaway from our chat?
His story, I think, invites us to reflect on those unexpected opportunities that might cross our paths and how challenges that initially seem insurmountable can, with effort and the right attitude, lead us down truly remarkable roads.
Hey, if you're listening to this, subscribe. It's right down below, completely free. And of course, give us a like so this video reaches many more people.